Grand Prix 3D car. V2 parts, so they're the latest parts that you'll be getting in a current kit. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies and welcome to part 12 of the Grand Prix 3D build. So here is all the parts that I've got so far. You may notice that if you watched my last build, we were doing the rear gearbox and I couldn't find the bevel gear. So it appears that I've accidentally got another motor pinion gear here, and after speaking to Andy, he's actually forwarded me a packet of his current updated parts. So what we're going to do is we're going to retrofit the updated parts. So if you get a car now, it will have all these parts included already. So some of these additional work that I've done prior, I guess that's for interest's sake now. It's a bit of history on the progression of the design of the car. But we've got quite a few extra gearbox parts, and I think the lay shaft's been redesigned. There's new steering column as well, which I'll retrofit at a later stage. I'll just continue on so we'll get this full finished, and then we'll retrofit the rest a bit later. All right, so what you find is if you do have an earlier kit and, no, actually I should say, if you've got a later kit, you will be using the original instruction manual, but there are addendums. So the addendums are here. So you see this part here is the steering column. So using bolts instead of grub screws. And then here is the rear axle. And the rear axle I already have in here. That's probably worth redoing, but we'll try and get the gearbox all in one place first. The outdrives. Okay, so they're using bolts. And then the upper lay shaft. So I think we'll start with this section and we'll continue building to get the gearbox on. Okay, so let's do that. So I've got, this is the earlier lay shaft that, hang on, is that it? No, that's this one. That's the earlier lay shaft that I've done. But with the new one, it's got new parts. So let's get into that. So I'll open this and we'll have a look at all the individual bits. Okay, so these are V2 parts. So you can see that there's a different end cap. I think it's an end cap for the gearbox. These ones here, different holes. These are the outdrives. Okay, so I'll pop those aside, we'll use them later. These ones as well. This is the steering column. So we'll just get all the bits that are going to be used in the gearbox. Okay, and there's the shocks. These are the front shocks. So I'll retrofit these new front shocks as well. So you may remember that the front shocks were a little bit tight. New bits there should be much freer. Okay, so it looks like we've got some new gearbox halves. Now, what is the difference? Oh, okay, so the main difference is around the bearing holder, because I think the bearings have changed. Okay, so we've got our old ones there. Make sure we don't mix them up. All right, so we'll keep those here. We'll get the parts which would be the lay shaft. That'll be the lay shaft here. Okay, so what have we got here? Have we got the right bits? So, looks like I've got another pinion, motor pinion here. Oh, there we go. All right, so what do I need? Let me just recognize all these bits. So there's this part. The lay shaft. Okay, so we're going to slide this together and align the holes. Okay. Okay, so we've done that. And it's held in place with the countersunk 2x10, which is this little black screw there. Let's just slide that in here. Get that screwed in. Oh, there's a smaller one here. I just screw this all the way in. Make sure that's tapped. Okay, so that's all the way through. Let's just make sure it fits through this hole. That's because I got it in the wrong hole. It's this one here. Ah, I see. Okay. Let's try that again. This is a pretty tight fit. Might just need to open up that a little bit just to get this to slide in. Let's get my mag visors on so I can see what's happening. So there's just a little bit of 3D printing. I guess it's, you could almost call it swarf, you know, as it's going from layer to layer. So just gently clear that out a little bit until it slides in. Oh, there you go. That's easy. Okay, the holes are lined up. Pop this in here. And this countersunk screw will just secure that all on this lee shaft. Should probably be easy to see over there because, I mean, black on black is a bit hard to see. Okay, so that's flush and that's tight. All right, so now we just have to space it for these bearings. So what's the green? So we've got a 5mm shim. Okay, so there's a 5mm shim. Pop that on. And then a flange 5x8 by 2.5. Whoops. And then another 5x8 by 2.5. So that's over here from the last, or from the original parts. Slide that on. And then we slide on a thick washer, which would be this one. Okay, that's a 0.8mm. And then putting the small pin through here, and that's going to hold on to that bevel gear that I've got on here. Okay, there's the Diff bevel pinion. Okay, and then we'll just drop it in to this gearbox half here. So I'll just drop into here. Okay. Okay, so that's in. And then the next step is we just drop this particular lay shaft in place. Although it looks different now. Put the bearings on the different way around. Okay, so this is a bit different. The idler pinion gear is slightly different design. Idler pinion gear. The groove screw located in the part in between the bearing and the teeth. Okay, so I'm guessing I spin these around, do I? Alright, let's see what happens. Alright, so I'm guessing it's this one, is it? Looks like a new one, and then I guess we use this existing bearing. I'll just gently pry this off the old gear. Alright, so we have the new gear here. Just needs a little bit of cleaning up. Just scrape the edge a little bit. Okay, see how we go. It's still tight, we'll just do a bit of sanding on the surface. It does look like it needs a little bit of sanding to get that on, okay, which isn't too hard. Just get my sanding block. We just gently sand all the way around. Alright, there's a fair bit more. Just a little ridge across here. Concentrate a bit more on this one. Okay, still pretty tight. We want it snug, but we don't want it so tight that we can't get the bearing off. Just takes a little bit more sanding. Getting closer, just a little bit more. All right, I think I'll just push it on now. That's nice and tight, very snug. Okay, basically it's going to drop into here. Okay, that looks all right. Let's just press it down, a little bit of force here. And now this is going to slide on. All right, so that hole needs to be drilled out a bit. Okay, that's a bigger hole. Let's see if we can just get some of this off the edge. A little bit more material. Now this part's got a flat end as well, so it's got a D shape. So it's going to help locate it on the flat section of the shaft. So I won't be able to drill that out with a drill bit, because otherwise you'll lose that flat. So just going to gently open it up with a knife blade. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're just going to space it out. So that it meshes up properly. All right, we're close. So it just needs the shaft to protrude a little bit. I've just gone a little bit over. Oops. All right, so I just press fit that. That's nice and slop through. You can see as I'm rotating that, the gears are turning. Might be easier to see over here. Oh, it's all falling apart. That's no good. Don't want to lose these parts. Okay, so there we go. Now this, let's see. I'll see what the plate is like. There's a little bit of sideways movement. There is an additional shim there if we need it. I may put that in there. We're just waiting until we get the diff in place and we're going to work out exactly where we're going to put it, whether we need it forward or back. Actually, I should put a grub screw in here to fix it in place. So this grub screw is just going to tighten up against the flat. Is that all right? Yep, that's all right. I better lose that again. Andy does mention to put some silicone grease in here on the pin just to hold it in place. It's probably handy. I just don't have my grease handy here. We'll just leave it there on dry. Just be a bit more careful. All right, let's move on to the next bit. Oh, that's the addendum to further along. Okay, so from here, we'll go back to the original manual and we'll start putting it back together, which would be over here, I think. There we go. Okay, so we've got the new V2 pinion in place. All right, that's all different now. It's all different. All right, we've got that sorted. That's all sorted. Okay, so now we're going to go into this construction part. Now, if we grab the gearbox here, so I already had this bearing placed here from last time. So this is going to sit in here, like so. You see there how that's spinning the motor pinion gear. So that's a spur on the bottom there. Okay, so we've already done the the gear mesh last time round. And this is where we get into the building of the actual gearbox. So let's just pop that back down. All right, we have our new halves. Is there a new end panel? Appears to be a few new bits here as well. Okay, but it looks like we'll continue using this one. Okay, so what do we have? Let's just make sure we have these orientated correctly. So I need this one here. With an M2 nut pressed inside. Just pop that on the end of this driver and we'll be able to press it in. Okay, nice and firmly. Alright, so if there's anything rough or so in this print, we need to take out the debris so it doesn't get in the way of the gears. Feels pretty clean, so we'll leave that. And now we're going to drop the diff in place. Okay, so I'll make sure I get this one here. There we go, we've got our diff. Drop that into here. Nice click. Okay, so there's the diff in place. This is the solid axle, or solid diff I should say. Okay, now we're going to put in that's the diff pinion. It keeps falling out. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm just going to wander off and get some grease. Okay, so here's some silicone grease. Just pop a bit on there. So if we put a little bit on the shaft, it's going to stop from just falling out. There we go. Right, that drops in place. Now we're going to put that to mesh up against the differential. Alright, so I'm just going to hold it in place and rotate this and see how smooth the action is. Because we've got a bit of play there. It's not too bad. I think I'll just leave it there and we'll see how it goes when we drive it. If we find any problems, we can always add the shim later. Alright, that feels alright. Okay, that'll sit in place. And then we'll get this A shaft back out. And we'll pop it in here. Alright, so this is the point where we're going to start greasing up the diff, I think. Now the spur gear is exposed, so we can always grease that later. This reduction here is exposed as well, so we'll grease that later as well because we just don't want it getting all over our fingers. But I will do some grease on the diff bevel. So let's just apply a bit of grease here. Now I'm pretty heavy on the smaller bevel gear. That's going to be doing the most rotations. What it's going to do is, as I rotate this, it's going to be putting on a nice thin film all across the main diff bevel.
I'm going fantastic, thank you.
Okay, so I think that's pretty good. It's coated the larger bevel. I'll just add a little bit more. Give it a nice coating. Okay, and as it rotates, it's just going to even up the application. Okay, so from here, we're going to drop on the other half. All right, so there's the other half of the gearbox. And that's going to sandwich everything together. Okay. So there we go. So if I rotate this, it's going to take some running in, because bear in mind that that diff gear is 3D printed. So it's going to need some time to run in. As long as it doesn't skip, it doesn't feel like it's skipping, I think it'll be fine. Okay, we've got those parts together, and I guess the next step would be getting the halves screwed together. Okay, here we go. So we're going to put in the a 2x16 screw to hold that all together. So 2x16, what's 2x16 look like? Let's see, I assume 2x16 will be the same width as this gearbox. So probably that one, that's the longest one I think. Yep, let's go with this one. Alright, so we've got the nut in this side. Put the screw on this side. Okay, so we'll screw it in. Looks about right. Got my 2mm driver. No. Here we go, that's a 1.5. Okay, so when we're tightening this up, the tension that we tighten up is quite important, because what it's going to do is it's going to be clamping the two sides of the gearboxes together. And if you over tighten, so I think this screw is a little bit too long. All right, slightly short with one here. Maybe that's the one I should be using. So it shouldn't be protruding. Let's see how this one goes. Right, that's better. So that's just hooked up to the nut on the other side. There's no more gap here. Just check to make sure it's free. It's got a little bit of resistance, but I think that's going to be normal as it's running in. We're really worried, we can back that off a little bit. Pretty much the same. All right, so we'll leave that as is. And we'll start putting on this end plate. Okay, so we need to put this gearbox plate over here. Okay, so that just fits over there. And then it's going to use a couple of screws. 2 by 8 mil. 2 by 8 mil. All right, I think I'm going to get a ruler just to make sure I get the right sizes. All right, 8 mil. Countersunk? 2 countersunks. I don't think countersunks there. Let's just check my spares. Countersunks? No countersunks there. Alright, let's see. I don't think countersunks would be... Actually, countersunks are used on this side. Alright, 2 by 8 countersunks. Let me try and find some. Well, I've got some here, which I think will be 8s. Alright, let's use the ones that are in here instead. These are probably the ones I need anyway. There's 4 in here, probably only need 2 for those out drives. Do a quick measure. Yep, perfect. All right, we'll use these and we'll just screw this end into here. And put the other one in too before we tighten it all up. So no chances of it warping. So I'm just doing up each side a little bit as I go. Just pulls each end tight. Ensures it's all aligned and nice and flat. All right, so that's tight. And that one's tight. Okay. Here we go. So we've got our gearbox all in place. Sounds a little bit crunchy, but that's okay. All right, so there's the motor pinion. And then that's the reduction on the other side. Okay. All right, now we're going to do the covers. So the covers are the aesthetic parts, make it look nice and pretty. All right, so we've got our gearbox halves here. And then we're going to have all these screws, 1.6 by 5s. So we need 8 of those. So I think they're going to be these. So 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. All right, move to the next bit. All right, so we're just going to start screwing these together. Just make sure they're the right side. Very easy to see. One side's got the cutout. All right, so it just drops into place. And we'll start screwing it up. Same sort of thing, so I just put these all into their correct locations without screwing them tight. All right, so now I'll start tightening up. Do that all the way around. All right, so that's one side all done up. Now we'll do the other side. Exactly the same procedure. All right, so that's the fourth one in, and I'm just going to start tightening out from here. And again, we just want them finger tight. All right, so there's no gap left. Okay, so the cover's on. Next step, gearbox attachment. Okay, so that's actually screwing the gearbox, and as you can see, the gearbox actually looks like the way the gearbox would be on the real car. Okay, so it's totally separate assembly, and this is just going to screw onto the back section here. All right, so it's going to be a little bit tricky getting it all aligned and getting the drive shafts in as well. So with the timing we have, I think we're going to call that the end of this particular build session. It's been good. We've got the V2 parts inside the gearbox now. Gearbox is all together. This is all rotating. So we're getting very close to having the gearbox finished. Got a few extra parts here, and we've got a few other V2 parts that we will be adding later down the track. First, we'll just get this fully assembled, and then all the other parts I can retrofit at a later stage. So thanks for joining me. This is the gearbox for the Grand Prix 3D car. V2 parts, so they're the latest parts that you'll be getting in a current kit, and they're vast improvements over the previous one with just the use of particular screws and just making it easier to put together. So thanks for joining me again, and I look forward to seeing you next time around.